Hello everyone, today we're going to talk about a classic study tool that has been popular for over a century, one you may have even used yourself before. If you haven't guessed based on the signature 3x5 inch parchment, we're going to talk about flashcards. Pretty much everyone knows what flashcards are, but less obvious to some might be when and when not to use them. The truth about flashcards is they're great for helping us recall some content that needs to be memorized. But to put into context, if we look at a knowledge hierarchy, flashcards fit into this very bottom rung. Granted, it can certainly help lead to more deep learning, such as understanding and applying, but truly it's best used for taking those first steps in learning something new. So because flashcards are limited to recall, the first general rule to follow is quick definitions. You want to be able to sift through flashcards quickly, hence the name. Along the same lines, you want to avoid sentences and make definitions as concise as possible. Lastly, you want to avoid putting concepts on flashcards that require knowing order. An example of this might be the citric acid cycle and other biological processes, or even an organic mechanism. In short, you want to avoid these kind of multi-step concepts because they're a little too complicated for flashcards. Trust me, I know from experience. Instead, flashcards work best for information that can be drilled quickly, shuffled, and only require rote memorization. An example of this is polyatomic ions, which students learn in general chemistry classes. These are great for flashcards because students simply need to be able to match the name of the molecule to its formula and charge. So they're really quick to make and quick to study. Also, you can see I'm using a highlighter here, and I'm grouping it by the charge of the molecule. Using a color code for note cards can be great. In this case, I'm using it to help me associate the color with a piece of information to fortify my recall. Color coding isn't necessary, but it can certainly make your notes more appealing and aid in the organization of your note cards. Another way you could organize your flashcards is by unit or chapter. This would be best for classes that you find yourself using a lot of flashcards for and needing to keep them separate and organized as the class goes on. Oftentimes, biology classes tend to require a lot of memorization and thus a lot of flashcards. So what I did is I simply wrote the unit and assigned a color to it, so now I know where that piece of information belongs. And this is just a great way, so if I want to go back and study, let's say for a final exam, I can just match the color of my note cards to the chapter and keep them organized in that fashion. Another subject flashcards work great for is organic chemistry. I think of all the classes I took in college, organic was the one where flashcards were the most useful. So if this class is in your future, you've been forewarned. But really, the takeaway here is that flashcards can be used for pictures and drawings and not just word definitions. In some cases, like this, you definitely want a picture over a worded explanation to help you understand. Just remember that the same rules apply, so keep the flashcards short and sweet and to the point. Lastly, I wanted to point out that flashcards can be useful in some math classes, although you probably won't be making as many. An example of this is basic trig rules that you have to know and are definitely necessary for most calculus classes. Maybe in statistics, you might find you can make a few flashcards. I just wanted to mention it because math seems like an unlikely option, but you can definitely still find a use for them in these kind of subjects. Also, one final note, I just wanted to mention Quizlet if you haven't heard of it before. It's a great online tool for making flashcards, and you can organize different classes into their own folders and create titles for each set. You can study the flashcards online, and it even keeps track of which ones you miss the most and which ones you get right the most. They also offer more interactive options like this matching game, and this just makes learning a little bit more engaging. Keep in mind, however, that the simple act of writing flashcards out reinforces your memory, so you don't get that same benefit from something like Quizlet. So this wraps up our how-to on making flashcards. I hope you found something useful from the video, and thanks again for watching.